And it's only Monday, so
I've been trying to conduct interviews with this, and then my computer just turned off. So, yes.
oh my gosh, Robin, we won't expect you to talk today.
What happened? Jeez. Oh, I'm so
Wow.
sorry. And for everybody, Robin is like my work partner in everything. Next to Shannon, she's the other. Like I have like three people or two other people who make me in as Shannon and Robin. And so I laugh because I'm like, what happened to your voice? I am so happy to see you all today. This is wonderful. Stephanie, hi. Oh, hello. I'm so happy you made it today. And Heidi's here. Hot dog. Look at all these friends who have made it. Oh, this is wonderful. Kasha's here. Wow. And Bailey and Jeannie and Annie. Siriani and Crystal. Hello. Colleen, I love your earrings today. They look beautiful. And Aaron, hi. Yay, you're here too. Oh, this is wonderful. We have a very exciting meeting today. We're going to just give it a second as everybody pours
Thanks,
in.
Veronica.
Yeah. And then I'm going to put community update information in the chat.
Ria, I just wanted to pop in here and let
Hi.
you know that Aaron and I have to hop off at just before 1 o'clock. We have
Okay,
another standing meeting at 1. I apologize.
great.
Ooh, I do
Thank
love your
you.
earrings. Those are so cute.
Thank
Ooh,
you, Colleen. We are going to record this, so we have a wonderful presentation today. So I'm this week, I know our Padlet is a little skeleton looking for current stuff. So I'm going to update this stuff this week. So we'll also have information from Chris today as well, which is very exciting. So
is Chris
let
here yet?
me
Was he going to come a
not
little bit
yet.
early?
He's going to come a little bit later. He said that he
Okay.
has a meeting that um overlaps. So welcome, everyone, to the November ECN meeting, which is very exciting. It's crazy that it's already November. Can you believe it? I like in, I think June, I felt like I was having a panic attack. I was like, oh, my year's over. Everything is booked, everything is planned. I like time, what is time anyway? And now here we are in November, and I'm like feeling the same way. I'm like, oh my God, it's all going so fast, but I am so grateful for everyone being here for today. I'm excited for you all to be able to take some time here in a minute to share your community updates. We're going to do breakout rooms since we do have our presentation with Chris. So we'll take about 20 minutes um, to do community updates. Shannon, did you want to do a quick? Yeah,
Yeah. So, welcome everybody. And I just wanted to do a quick introduction. I have Heather Foxworthy joining us today as a visitor. She waved. She's with the State Parents as Teachers Office. So she has everything to do with parents as teachers statewide. And I just thought this would be a great to introduce you to her. You guys have her face and name. And she can learn a little bit more about the Early Childhood Network. So welcome, Heather. And if you want to say, do you want to say anything really quick, Heather, that I don't know if there's anything additional you want to say.
Just thanks for letting me hang out today. And I think I know half the people here, but I am Heather Foxworthy with the Parents as Teachers State Office. If you didn't know, we are located within the Child Welfare Academy, part of UAA's College of Health. I wear several hats for Child Welfare Academy. So you might have met me through Strengthening Families or Erickson's Fans, some of the smaller trainings we do, but Parents as Teachers is by far my favorite hat to wear.
oh,
Thanks, Heather.
amazing. Love it. Great. Um, this is wonderful. Everyone is flying in. This is so great. So we are gonna go ahead. Let's see. Let me do math really quick. All right, we've got 20 people. I had to take into consideration the AI friends that have joined. So we're gonna do 5 breakouts of 4. And so I will send everybody off and we'll come back in about 20 minutes. 15 minutes. 15, Shannon? 15? Perfect. Okay. We'll see y'all soon. Have fun. Rita, did you get invited into a room?
Yes, I was just jotting down the talking points. Yep, here we go.
Oh, good. It should show up
Oh,
in your
okay.
room too.
Okay.
Yeah. Yes.
Rianne, I'm
Yes,
going to
sir.
send, Lisa is looking for the link.
Buddy, welcome back. Did everybody get a chance to share during their updates? Yeah, lots of opportunity to learn. I can't wait to hear about some of the amazing things happening in programs. But we are going to jump right in because our friend Chris Sturm is here. He is our presenter this afternoon. Chris, if you want to give a wave, there he is. And so we are going to hand over the reins to Chris and let him just introduce himself and his expertise and the amazing things he does across the state, him and his colleagues. And so if you joined us for the Home Visitors Alliance Summit last year or part of the ECHO, you might have met him there, but he's an amazing partner and friend and just positive impact maker here across Alaska. And so when Shannon and I were like, ooh, who can we have for training? We both in unison said, Chris, we need to bring him back. Amazing things, energy, just positivity across the state to make good changes. So without further ado, Chris, I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to you and let you take the floor.
Thank you so much. What a lovely introduction. It's a pleasure to be here. My heart sits in early childhood. Um, I um, I learned early on that that's where we make the most difference, right? And that I'll talk about that a little bit today, especially now that I work with complex and interfering behaviors. And I'll even talk about that. Like, what the heck does that mean? What is that like a problem behavior, challenging behavior, all that stuff. But I taught first grade for a few years. Got a master's in early childhood education. I studied with Lillian Katz, if anyone's aware of the project approach method and that whole method around working with early childhood. The Reggio Emilia approach was part of that as well too. But I've always believed that if there's any way that we can really do anything and have a significant impact in society, it starts with our youngest because by the time they get to be in fourth grade or fifth grade, the problems are a lot more complex and unraveling those things is a lot harder. I'm working right now at the Center for Human Development. I'll be transitioning in the next 3 weeks, 2.5 weeks to another position, but I'll still be available if for follow-up. So the email and all the information I show at the end will still be relevant for me if you want to reach out and have any more conversations after this as well, or if you have any more questions. It's great to see familiar faces here. I recognize some people. Heidi, I'm going to talk a little bit about CMHI today. It's great to see you here. Amy, I think you were involved in some of the early pyramid model stuff here as well, too, at PIC. And so I'm going to talk about that a little bit as well, too. I feel like I'm bringing everything together in my experience over the last 15, almost 20 years now here working at CHD. And Heather, it's great to see you here, too. I just met Heather last week. It's like small world, right? So yeah, so I'll just I'll dive right in here and then because I want to allow some time for Q&A and even just conversation as well too after I finish up talking about some of the things here that I wanted to share today from my experience. Let's see here. The way the buttons shift around at the bottom, it always kind of throws me here. All right, let's see here. So, all right, hopefully you can see that okay. It looks like it's coming out that way. And I'll keep the chat up as well too, so that way I can if you have questions or need clarification or if you want to add something as well as we're going along here, feel free to just throw something in the chat. And I'm pretty good at multitasking here. I've been doing like online stuff since 2005 really, and although I started with Illuminate Live, that's where I'm showing my age because that was a while ago. The one thing I can't see too well are your expressions. So let's see. There we go. I've got you all pulled up here. I'm luckily on two monitors here. So Yeah, my age also shows by my my all my white hair here as well. One of the kiddos I was working with, he's an older kiddo, he's a middle school guy, called me Colonel Sanders last spring, you know. I'm like, well, yeah, I kind of got that look going, right? I just need the outfit to go along with it. Um, all right, so enough about me here. We'll jump right in here. And like I said, feel free to throw stuff in there. I'm a board certified behavior analyst. That means I specialize in behavior. I work on the science of behavior, which I'm going to say right away, it's applied behavior analysis, and all of you have probably heard a lot of bad things about it at one point or another. It's definitely been in the news a lot, but I'm one of the more, I'll take on what Rand said. I'm positive. I also am very kind and gentle, and I'm the kind of behavior analyst that doesn't force completion, that doesn't force compliance, and especially in the work that I do around complex behaviors, that definitely is not a strategy that works. So. I just want to put that out there and kind of have a little bit of a disclaimer, kind of give a little context to who I am as a behavior analyst who works with ABA every day. Um, we're looking today at like how to strengthen support in Alaska. There's a lot of things that are going on here, and there's a lot of resources available too that are for free that are out there. So some of the things you might be aware of, some of the things you might not be. If there are things that you're aware of, I apologize for the duplication. It's just kind of making sure that, with this group, it sounded like it would be a great opportunity to share some of these things to kind of give you all a very big picture of complex behaviors here in the state of Alaska and the different ways to support them as well. Whoops. We'll kind of start here if I can. There we go. One thing I want to start off with first is challenging behavior. It's a term I've been using for years. In the last 3 years, though, I've been trying to move away from it. And I've been the hard part was trying to find a better term or a term that's going to work pretty well. And so the one thing I kind of came up with as I started looking at challenging behavior and thinking about it is that oftentimes challenging behavior, it really interferes with a lot. It's going to interfere with that child's learning and development. It definitely interferes with the relationship that they have with their parents. Some of the work that I do, it's trying to help repair those relationships and help them function in a more healthy way when I'm doing my consultation. Relationships with siblings as well too. I think when I started working in the field, when I came back to it, because I did educational technology for several years, but when I came back to it, a lot of people were putting out books about how, oh yeah, I grew up with a sibling that had autism and our whole life was defined that way, but that's just kind of scratches the surface when we start talking about, if there's any kind of challenges in that relationship as well because of the behavior of one person. That relationship with peers is interfered with, as well as their access to the community. Going out and just going to the grocery store is a huge effort. And so, given the fact that that behavior interferes with a lot, that's kind of the term that I've chosen to use over the last few years is interfering behavior. I refer to behavior that has some kind of disruption in that individual's life is interfering. And I like this because it doesn't have that kind of one-sided judgmental approach. It's looking at it from both sides. And to be honest, it's a situation, right, where as a parent or as a caregiver, I can say I have interfering behavior too. And there's nothing wrong with that because I know I'm a behavior analyst, but sometimes I was too tired to deal with some of the stuff that my kids, were bringing to me when I came home from work, right? None of us are perfect and we shouldn't expect ourselves to be. And so taking on, that label of I sometimes engage in interfering behavior, it sounds a lot less judgmental, a lot less difficult than saying I'm engaging in challenging behavior. So the interfering behavior, I've given some talks on it over the last few years at different statewide conferences, and that's kind of my perspective and where I'm coming from is that the behavior is interfering. It reflects both a child's situation, but also it can be mine as a parent too, when I don't quite have the energy or the emotional regulation to be able to push through something. All right, so that said, that's kind of like my spiel to get us started here. I got a little light bulb there because it's kind of one of my main ideas, like my big idea, I guess. Um, Now, the other thing I talk about too with people is when to label things as interfering. And this is kind of the cornerstone of behavior analysis because, all of these things are things that are very observable, things that we can count. How often something happens, if it happens too long or too much, we can measure those things easily and make a determination that based on the fact that, I had one individual who would he was an adult, 37 years old, but sometimes a simple little issue would cause him to escalate and become destructive and aggressive for anywhere from 3.5 to 4 or 5 hours. There was a medical issue in the background of all that that we discovered later on, but you know, being able to count up how long these things were happening, it really helped reinforce for everyone that we needed to do something about the situation. Ultimately, though, for me, it really becomes a quality of life issue too, is when it starts interfering with that person's daily life. And that's where we come back to those things, right? Relationships with parents, going out in the community and doing things. I would imagine, raise your hand. I mean, if you've worked with families who they say they don't go out in the community because it's too stressful for them with their children. I see a lot of head nods and hands. Yeah, right. I mean, sometimes that's one of the first things that I start to work on is not necessarily that we're going to go out and go to Fred Meyer, right? But that we can go out and they can go somewhere like maybe to a park and have a good positive experience. And we can start building those skills of how they can interact with their child and how their child can interact in a way that's going to help them both feel successful in that. Yeah, yeah, that's a stressful thing and a real thing. And again, to me, it's a quality of life issue. I realize I should have capitalized the L on life too, right? Because life's important. Um, and this is where too, like, for this and then earlier talking about interfering, it's really coming back to that perspective. And so I kind of put this out there just because it's kind of goofy and funny. One person's excited, oh, I see a boat, and the other guy's excited, I'm finally seeing land. But it really depends on what side we're on as to what we're going to see and what we're going to think. And that's why, in our work that we do consulting here at our Center for Human Development, but also to other consultants like me that work around the state, it's really trying to think of it from that, basically from the child's perspective. The person that's having some challenges, that's having that complex interfering behavior occur, we've got to really think about it from their point of view. Um, and that's, mainly because when we're in that situation, that person's trying to tell us something. And if they had the language to be able to tell us, they would have. This one, to be honest, this one I learned from early childhood. I learned like about this during the pyramid model. I mean, I assume everyone's heard this one before. Yeah. Yeah, I see some heads nodding. Yeah. This is another big idea too. It's interesting because they don't talk about this as much with like older children and youth or adults. I think there's kind of this assumption, well, they can talk, so they'll just tell us, right? But I mean, I break it down this way because when we're thinking about communication, it's a lot of nonverbal things too, right? And I always think about like, especially with kids I've worked with, if they're telling me one thing and they're showing me another thing, I tend to go with their nonverbal communication. That's the thing that I'm reading more. And I'm thinking about our young children out there, right? They're learning language, so they don't have that robust language. They may not have a way to label emotions. They may not have a way to describe what's happening. We have to really look at that nonverbal piece. And when we look at interfering behavior, it's full of nonverbal communication. The challenge sometimes is just figuring out what does it mean? And that's where people like myself come into play and we'll figure out what this means and we'll figure out that clear communication path and work with that person, whether it's a child or an adult, to help them be able to communicate in a way that helps them get their needs met and a lot better, a lot more effective, a lot quicker. And then ultimately for us, right, it's going to be a lot more appropriate. It's easier to tolerate if they're using their words or using a visual, like visual pictures, like a picture exchange system, like PECs and such. But the one thing too that I always stress with interfering behavior is that it is this person's last way of trying to communicate what their needs are and getting those needs met. Their interfering behavior is a demand. So it's like giving an ultimatum to your kid, clean up your room or else you're not going outside to play, right? This is their ultimatum. I'm going to destroy this. I'm going to destroy this room and turn up tables and break things and throw things until you X, whatever it is that I need. Problem is, a lot of times we just don't know what that is. And so that figuring that out can be really, really challenging sometimes. And I wanted to talk about this a little bit too, because, in our world, we talk about it as needs. And a lot of people kind of look at needs as these primary things, right? I mean, you might remember when you're in school, like, oh, all we need food, shelter, and clothing, right? Those are the primary, those are needs. Everything else is a want. Although admittedly, through my experience, I now put bathroom on the list as a primary need. Like we need to know where a bathroom is. Otherwise, the consequences could be really ugly. But those other needs are wants, but I refer to them and talk about them as secondary needs because they're ones that we've learned. And I think about things that we've learned to help us cope in a situation, right? We might have a fidget. I have my wedding ring. I played with it so much. This is the second one. I broke the first one because I fidget so much with it. Um, so yeah, it might be a fidget. It might just be sometimes we need a break, right? We just need to step aside. Hey, you take care of this. I'm going to tag out. Um, there's lots of different things like that that help us regulate. And at that point, that's not a want anymore. That's a need. Something that helps me stay calm, something that helps me stay centered, something that helps me stay focused. I grew up, for example, not listening to music at all when I studied, but there's nothing I like better than putting on some heavy metal like Judas Priest or Michael Schenker or the Scorpions, and it helps me focus. I can listen to that loud music and be totally focused in on what I'm doing. And in speaking with a lot of other adults as well as children, doing other things at the same time as they're listening can help them focus on what's being said. So all of these things that might seem like wants, they're really needs. They're just not those primary needs that we learned about in school. And so that's where when I think about this, it actually really tips to us having more needs than wants in this situation. Again, I got another light bulb there. It's my big idea, but it doesn't have to be yours, but just throwing it out there. Um, let's see, Rand saying, I always refer to my water bottle as my security water bottle because in my anxiety or stress, I know that a drink of water will help me regulate. Totally, right? What's that one thing that helps us take a pause? What I teach too is I teach some of the younger kids I work with, more like kind of early teens, tweens. I teach them in a social situation when they're not sure what to do, just to laugh a little bit to themselves. It helps them take in some breath, it helps them expel the breath, and then it gives them a little bit of time to think before they respond. And I recommend it with adults too. It works with my teens. I taught them how to do it as well, and it worked really well with them. Because then it also creates a little uncertainty on the other end, like what exactly is so funny to them? So it helps to kind of create a space for that person to come in and be able to respond and not feel that pressure and anxiety and tension that they might. Love that. That's a good one. So determining when a behavior is interfering, I kind of added this last minute because I'm like, I think this is the challenge with early childhood. And this is what I talk about with young kids and even actually the teenagers. I've got a teenager I'm working with right now as well too. And I'm talking with the parents about what's developmentally appropriate for them. What are they going to be doing developmentally at the age of 12? That's going to seem like a challenging behavior, but to them it's like a natural part. And one of those things is pushing away from adults more, trying to establish their own independence, trying to establish their own character. And for young kids, it's really challenging, I think, because they're learning so much at one time in a short period of time, and they don't have the self-regulation, the language, all these other things necessarily to be able to help them cope with it and deal with it. So this is the thing I always ask is what's developmentally appropriate? That's always where I start, even with my adults, where are they developmentally and what they're doing, it fits with where they are developmentally. So we do things in utilizing developmentally appropriate practices. I mean, the thing of it is there's this whole idea of maturation and growing out of it, right? But really, I think that's where kids have figured some things out, but they've also had the most appropriate supports at the right time to help them be able to go to that next step in their learning and development rather than regress, rather than stay at the same level. Something in the environment's definitely helped them as well. And that would be the parents around them or their early child care providers that they see. The other thing I talk about too is starting early and starting small. And this is where it's a little bit hard to picture, and I this is a more of a new idea for me as well too that I'm starting to explore more, but keep alive the possibility that behavior isn't developmental. So even if we think it's developmental, we're doing some things to try and help the child move past this to, we're teaching some new skills. We're helping them in new settings apply that new skill that we taught. But always kind of keeping in the back of your head, what if it's not developmental? Mainly because I say that because it's easier to look at young kids and to be able to figure those things out when they're younger than when they're older. I mean, by the time they're in fourth grade, for example, this was something I tracked when I was teaching. They talked about like girls getting turned off to math by the time they're in fourth grade, and there's just, it's no matter what they've done. And so one of the small things that they recognized in the research was the attitude that was expressed by teachers in those formative years really helped determine what their attitude was, what most girls' attitude was towards math in fourth grade. And so, by then it's very complex. It's going to be hard to unravel, hard to fix, and hard to solve because so many other things have come in to influence that behavior. And that, in this case, that thinking about how good they are at math. When they're young, it's easier to sort those things out and to really try and again shift that path so that they're able to progress rather than regress. Again, I need to develop this more, don't I? It's kind of like it's definitely an undeveloped thought on my mind, on my here. All right. So pushing ahead, I told everyone I'd mentioned pyramid model. I had to have a picture of it because this is my favorite representation of like the pyramid, the triangle, whatever you want to call it. I've worked in schools with PBIS. I've worked in agencies and bringing PBS into their agencies, but I've always come back to like the pyramid because it's got that foundation of that effective workforce. So it's training, it's support for the people that are in there and the families, right? If we look at applying this to families, but it's also got the idea of like relationships at the very bottom. Those things are core. That's a core piece. Right now, a lot of the conversation that we're talking about in different groups I'm in, we're talking about how it's an echo that we're doing right now where we're making this much more public is the relationship is the intervention. Having that solid relationship, that's the primary intervention for not only young kids, but even for, youth, tweens, teens, that relationship becomes really paramount. And the pyramid model, I'm kind of biased towards it because, I love that it uses plain language. I love that it's easily accessible. It's focused on relationships and routines. I really like the fact that it's focused on routines because we all learn things in very specific ways, right? But I like the way that it helps categorize how we do things. Because I remember when I was teaching and there'd be additions to the curriculum and it was hard because it was more like we were generating a longer list of things to do rather than kind of putting it into a framework and like, oh yeah, that this fits here and this fits here. It was kind of up to us teachers to figure that out. And I like that the pyramid model really kind of offers that framework of, oh, when I hear about a new intervention, oh, this is going to be part of my relationship building, or oh, this is part of my setting up the environment to be a learning space. And so I appreciate the way it helps me think about things that way in particular. I imagine how many of y'all have worked with the pyramid model before, or maybe you currently are now too. I know with Threads, they brought it back into Thread. I think Shannon, you sit on the leadership team, right?
I do. Just to let you know, yeah, we're implementing, we've just done some intros to Pyramid the last couple of weeks. So we're implementing 4 new sites for the state leadership pathway. Their school districts and Head Starts. And then we're looking towards the end of the year towards home visiting models. So we'll keep you guys in the loop as we move forward.
That's right. The home visiting models, those were, I remember when those first came out. That was exciting. Oh my gosh. That's great. Yeah, it's exciting to see there's renewed interest in bringing and not bringing it back. I guess it's always kind of been here really with Megan Johnson's work, but it's nice to see that it's becoming prominent again, I think. Again, as many of you know, it's all based on prevention, right? And whoops, I think I skipped ahead here. It's all based on prevention, but it's also got really, I like the fact that it's got really small chunks that makes it a lot easier to be able for people just to kind of take a part of it at least. You don't have to do this whole expansive effort necessarily, but you can take some of these interventions around building relationships and some around setting up the environment. It makes it more consumable that way, I guess. And that's what I wanted to talk about too, a little bit more in terms of resources here today as well. Um, how many of you were at the home visiting summit in January? I think Rianne mentioned there might be a few of you here. 'Cause some of the things I'm going to go over are a little bit of a repeat. I wanted to talk about, since we're talking about interfering behaviors, I wanted to first start kind of talking about some resources that are out there. And positive solutions for families is one of those. And Amy, I don't know, you all might have utilized this at Pick, I think, back in the day. Does it sound familiar to you at all? Yeah, I see your head nodding. That's good. Yeah. Um, Stone Soup Group. I know Pam Shackelford was with Stone Soup Group, and they were doing a lot with positive solutions for families going out. They were hosting trainings not only here in Anchorage, but also going out to other communities. It's a very great entry level way to really work with kids that you are concerned might have some complex and interfering behaviors. This is a good starting point to really help tease out some of those things. And I mean, here are the goals are listed where it's like, we've got, all kinds of things, there are going to be outcomes on of the positive solutions, but it's not going to be the focus of like, we want you to follow directions, right? It's not about forced compliance, about forced rule following. It's something that builds up to that. Um, and then when I look at this too, I think, and you might think about this as well, when you're thinking about your families you work with or some of the parents specifically. I mean, I know that I know that I've struggled with some of these through my adult years, just dealing with some of the things in my past, right? And so, what percent of your parents are going to be competent in all these as well, too? So, I mean, thinking about our own competence, thinking about our family's competence that we're working with, that'll help us better understand where our children are coming from, right? It'll help us get to that child-centered approach in terms of, you know, kids are going to need to work on, they're going to need to learn skills around building relationships, following directions, and managing their emotions. So, I mean, these are just basic core human skills, really. There are seven different topics that it's broken into, and again, too, it covers all these things like how do you build those positive relationships? How do you link all those things together? Your relationship to playing to your child's behavior as well. They have one section that just focuses on routines, which I love because developmentally, everything we learn in context, and then we learn to try to apply it in other situations. I know I've had this conversation a lot, and that's where when you look at some of the things happening in the mental health realm, the behavioral health realm here in the state, there's a big push to do home-based family services because what kids and families learn in clinic doesn't necessarily translate to the home, right? But if I could have a clinician come into my home and see what my home is like and understand and give me advice that's going to be tied to what my home is like, and it's just kind of like the home visitors, right? That's your whole approach. That's the whole idea behind home visitors is to be able to do that. It makes this whole idea of building routines and helping with all these different other issues that might be going on in the family. It helps them learn those skills and help them become successful that much quicker. And you'll notice the last section here too is it's all about bringing things together with a behavior plan if you need. And that's the nice thing too about this is you can have a plan or not. Overall, the focus is on social emotional learning. So it's looking at what do kids need to learn in terms of labeling emotions, understanding that they're feeling emotions, right? But the nice thing too is it reminds us that we need to teach these things. And so I like with families, it gives this in some situations, most of them actually it gives a script of how to teach things, not just like tell your kids to do this and then it's done, right? But how do you help teach it? How do you model it as a parent? And then how do you help kind of move it from one situation to another? They have an apply it and try it too. That's part of this as well, where it's like if you're looking at this as a training that you do over 7 weeks, each week you can have homework and some of the things they have are ways to think about doing things a little differently, so they have some really great prompts, some great suggestions on how to help move that needle forward, because I know sometimes I get stuck in a rut even when I look at my behavior plans. Sometimes I need to like just say I'm doing this intervention all the time and I'm just like a robot. I need to rethink this and rethink my approach to it, and that's what's nice about it is this really helps you do that as well. And again, too, it focuses on rapport building, it focuses on that relationship. And there's lots of little small pieces in here as well, kind of like with the pyramid model. There's small pieces that build into that pyramid of support. Similarly, with positive solutions for family, there's all these small parts that you can take out. I mean, out of these, for example, like the rapport building and yeah, that whole idea of relationship building, you know, how many of these have you tried before? My guess would be probably several of them at this point, right? Um, but it's that piece around like it's not just one intervention, right, that's going to do the trick. And that's the thing I talk about with when we're talking about complex interfering behaviors, usually it's going to require several things to put in place. And so it's a little bit more of a of like putting a puzzle together, but we don't have no idea what the picture is going to look like. So we might need to try 5 or 6 of these. We might only need 2 or 3 of them for some kids. And similarly too around like the social emotional skills here. Oh, there we go. Where again it's that focuses on teaching. And even when we talk about how to teach, looking at teachable moments, creating those moments, not necessarily, okay, it's lecture time. It's time for me to tell you what you need to do. But, talking about how we can create some situations like, for example, I'm making a sandwich and I make a mistake and I can model Tucker the turtle and I could take a break and I could reset myself and then I come back. Oh, yeah, now I've got it. Whether or not, we actually felt really upset over making a mistake with a sandwich is immaterial. The idea is it gives us the opportunity. The parents can learn how to model some of these things and get outside their comfort zone a little bit as well with it. And they can do it in partnership too with support from you all as well. The one thing I like about this slide too is it talks about when to teach, planning ahead. I mean, it's this whole idea of we've got to be a step or two ahead of our kids, and we've got to really kind of anticipate. And I think that's something that kind of gets missed as well too, which is why I come back to like keeping that open, keeping things open for it could be developmental or maybe not. So we're planning ahead, and hopefully it'll go this way, but maybe not. And so to kind of help build in that flexibility for us and help us be a little bit more resilient by being able to be flexible. The last one, though, I imagine is pretty hard. Rhiannon and Shannon, I imagine you all work on this, and all of you do a lot actually, is what's reasonable for your child. So when I think about what's developmentally appropriate, that's kind of my go-to, but it's not necessarily what other people think of in most situations. They're 7, they should know how to do this. They're 5, this is what they should be doing. Well, maybe your 5-year-old did, but this one doesn't. So there's probably some gaps in their learning. Let's figure out what that is and let's help them out. Let's meet them where they are. Um, oh, I'm just seeing the chat about the pyramid model here. Wondering if Anchorage or Alaska has pyramid schools that focus on the pyramid model as support. That's really awesome. Yeah. I know. I think, and I know for a while when I was involved with the Pyramid Project, there was so much happening at the national level, and that's one thing I haven't tracked as well. But that's great that other people are and kind of holding us to task, right? Keep that standard. All right. So interventions, they mentioned a lot of specific ones here, and I was thinking for this one, if take a moment and kind of what I'd like you to do is to do a little chatterfall in here and kind of talk about what your favorite intervention is here, or one that you've found that worked really well for some of the kids or families that you worked with. Um, or maybe it's some of the staff that you work with as well too. What are the ones that they come back to? Because I think this is where, it's really an opportunity to see kind of what's going on out there. Because I'm surprised sometimes how many people haven't heard of like social stories, for example, or scripted stories, whereas other people, they swear by them, and any kind of new activity they're planning, they're gonna do a social story for it. They're gonna write a short story. They're gonna have pictures with it. They're gonna read it. They're gonna read it multiple times a day over the course of several weeks, sometimes building up to an event. But yeah, so just take a moment to think about to type in the chat some of those 1 or 2 interventions that you found to be the most useful or that you've heard a lot about or have been most effective in your own work here. And while you're doing that, I'm going to read Amy's message here. Oh yeah, Amy, I appreciate what you're saying there. Amy made a comment about what's reasonable for parents. Amy, that's a really good point. And that's one of the things in my consultation is I really do it in my early interviews and meetings with parents. I really look at what can they do and what can't they do? What are they able to do? What are they willing to do? And what might be a little bit more difficult? And I must admit it's a little bit more informal, but a lot of it just comes through conversations that we're having, and parents give a sense of like kind of what their cognitive load is, what their workload is. And then from there, I'm able to propose a couple options for them and make some, do you want to do this or that? And then they can actually choose what's going to be better for them. Because yeah, what's reasonable for parents, that becomes a challenge. I could write a multi-component behavior plan that's 15 pages long, but if parents aren't able to do it, then it's not going to be worth it. It's not going to be an effective plan. All right, I see we got routines in here. Yeah, routines. Those are my favorite. I must admit, I'm even with my kids, I had visual routines, when they were young. My wife's like, "But what are you doing?" I'm like, "This is who I am, this is what I do." You know, um, Redirection, that works great for kids and adults too. Yeah, that's right. We just need to take a beat before we can have a constructive conversation. Yeah. Redirecting to a different topic briefly can be effectively disarming. Exactly. Yeah, it really can be. The power of redirection. I feel like that should be like a book or something, because there's so many different ways we can do it. Transitions for young ones. Yeah, that's a good one. Dimming the lights, then singing bye bye song. Yeah. Oh, those are great. And I mean, and those are all environmental things too, right? Those are things that we change in the environment to help them learn, oh, it's transition time and this is what I do. I feel like that's another book that should be written is just transitions, right? People talk about like, oh, change is hard. It is, but I think it's because our lives are full of transitions. We're transitioning from work to home to family we're going to go skiing at night, but then we've got to like help our kids with homework. We're transitioning so frequently during the day. And it's not so much change, though. It's just that it's these transitions. And how do we get through them in a way that's healthy for us and healthy for whomever we're transitioning with or to at that point? Heidi's first then. Yeah, I love first thens too, man. And then you can do it so many different ways too as kids get older. That's one I use with adults too. I'll use that first then idea, but I'll phrase it differently based on, how they respond to things. Because some of the adults I've worked with, oh God, first then that's such a kid's thing, you shouldn't treat me like that. Oh yeah, you're right. You know what? You're right. And so I'll completely revamp things and we'll have a different way of talking about it. So it's more appropriate to them and they'll accept it more. Social stories first, then redirection. Yeah, modeling is a great one too. That's one that, oh man, I love the modeling thing too. I feel like it's something we can just do all the time, right? Life's just a big model. Deep breaths and drinks of water. Yep. Natural combination of breaking down the steps. Yep. First, then problem solving. Yeah, that's the thing too, is like how many steps of a task can someone handle? How far do we have to break it down? Sometimes as a behavior analyst, I get in the weeds and I was in one meeting and I said, this was for an adult and she wanted to be on her phone at night. And so I said, oh, I've got this whole plan for how we can like fade away from her. We'll set up this little nightstand next to her door and we'll put her phone there and then we'll put it out in the door. And then one of the providers is like, well, why don't we just say, hey, let's put your phone to bed at night and you can see it in the morning. And that worked, you know. All right, great. Yeah, great responses. A lot of great stuff going on. That's exciting. I
Chris,
want
can
to.
I just share a
Oh
story
yeah.
from this weekend really quick? So obviously being like me and my family and kids, we're all a bunch of talkers. Like they are my children, so they talk just as much as me. And my daughter we threw her like a surprise party this weekend, so it was like excitement and like overwhelm and overstimulation. And so the next day she was just like really in her feels. And my son, who's 2, doesn't have a lot of like words yet. They saying, but he just walked over. He was like, Tita, Tita, you're okay. And like started modeling deep breathing with her and like held her hands and like he goes, Mama, water. And so I went and got water for him. I was like, what is happening? He's totally coaching his 6-year-old sister through this whole emotional process. And then he's like rubbing her arm. He's like, you okay, Tita? You okay? Tita, his sister in Hawaiian, you okay, Tita? Gave her a big hug. He's like, okay, now we play. And like walked off with her and everything was fine. I was like, huh, I have to do nothing here. They just have watched each other and support each other through the success of acknowledging emotions and like using different techniques. And I was just so proud and happy for that moment. I was like, oh, parenting win. I had to do nothing. Saved by Kaimana. That's what I said.
I love that. That is so awesome, right? And that's what we want, right? We want them to have the skills to be able to help themselves and each other ultimately. You know, it can't be us all the time helping them, right? Trust me, it gets by the time they get to be 18, it gets to be a lot. That's awesome, Rand. Thanks for sharing that. Um, I wanted to share Tucker the Turtle just because that's something I've used a lot, and it's just a great. It's some of the things that for modeling, belly breathing, taking breaks, resetting it. It's a great resource to use. And I remember learning about it first with the pyramid model, but I've actually used it with some of my clients. Oh, Heidi's like, I use Tucker for myself. I love that, Heidi. That's great. Oh my gosh. Yeah. Yeah, Tucker's my friend, and they've got all kinds of updated materials with him too. And I'll show you a place where you can access some of those too if you'd like later on. Um, One of the things too, in the end, when it all comes together, it's about making that plan. It's about being a detective, which I love, because it's not about like trying to be a authoritarian or anything, or like I got to dominate this thing, or I'm going to coerce my kid to do what they need to do. But it kind of builds throughout all those, not all the sessions, but many of the sessions. It builds that whole idea builds up to making that plan in the end if you need. So that's what's nice again about positive solutions is because it can be just for some basic things, or it can be for a full on, you know, great first attempt really at a behavior plan to help out. Um, Again, too, some of the advantages, apply and try it. It's got the behavior plan, lots of handouts. So what I like about the handouts is there's lots of different ways to kind of talk about, to think about, to help conceptualize of what you need to do or what the kiddo needs, when you're helping them out and working with them. So, I love the fact that it can meet different people on different level of need in that regard. Um, so that said, I want to do some more resources here. Some of these might be familiar. Challengingbehavior.org, that's the National Technical Assistance Center. Give me a thumbs up or a thumbs down if thumbs up if you're familiar with it, or a thumbs down if you don't know about it. Yeah, I'm seeing some there. It's been my go-to since I think 2009. It's changed in a lot of ways, but I love this. And in fact, what I'll do is I'll show you some of the resources. I'll give you a little bit of a tour here. I'll stop this sharing here and let me get to that. I realize I didn't put that site all the way on the top of everything here. All right. So let me share. I'm going to share the website and just kind of go through some of them here, one by one. Um, so this is the National Center site right here. This is their homepage, and you can see across the top, there's lots of different things. There's things on the pyramid model. So it's even got behavior intervention and positive behavior support in there. They've got different things on implementation. This is where you get into things more around childcare, right? And then they talk more too is about technical assistance and training that you can get if you want to work with a larger group of people. But it's a fantastic clearinghouse of information here. But what I wanted to highlight, though, especially is the family engagement piece. So if you go under implementation and you go to family engagement, you'll end up right here. And they have a lot of great materials. The ECTA series doesn't actually link here anymore. It's broken. But if you go down here, they have all kinds of different resources around different things: behavior regulations, friendship, emotional literature, problem solving, social emotional skills. And they even have some scripted stories here as well. So you click on those and you can kind of see some of these things come up. Some, pre-made, ready-made, and in Spanish and English as well as other languages here, Somali, I guess. Yeah. So it's some really great resources here. If you go under I'm trying to think where Tucker the Turtle is here now. I've got to think back because they changed the site a little bit. Okay, it's under behavior regulation. And then if I scroll down, this is where we'll see different things like how to introduce the turtle technique. And then they've also got different materials too about like, it's funny, the relaxation thermometer. I'm using something kind of like this with another one of my middle schoolers as well, a kind of a variation on this. But here they've got the turtle technique broken down into 4 simple squares. And even below here, there's more information. They've got a PDF as well for the social story, the scripted story that you can read with kids as well. But you can see they've got a host of materials up here that they're available for free. And again, they're a great resource because they've not only got free material, but they've got it in all these different areas that are so appropriate for early childhood. And they even, I like this one too. They've even got this area too on that family-child relationship as well. Oh, the emotional piggy bank too. I love the emotional piggy bank. Man, that takes me back. I tell you what. Because I used to use that same idea just with my kids. Like, we've got to be kind to each other. We've got to fill their bucket. But the emotional piggy bank, it's so much better because it's like I'm actually putting forth effort to put money in the piggy bank. You know. Um, so yeah, so I can't recommend this site enough. Additionally, there are training modules in here as well. So this is where I was surprised not to see some of the older home visiting training modules, but they do have. I remember being really excited when these came out, the Pee-wee modules, the parents interacting with infants and toddlers. So it was really exciting because again, it has that whole piece around how do we build good relationships? How do we respond? How do we talk? It provides so much support and help for those parents that might be struggling with some of that. But it also, too, again, there's like small little pieces that people can take out of that as well. You don't have to do the whole package of the modules. You can just take out some of the things that are part of that as well. They also have preschool parents here as well, and this is where you'll find the positive solutions for families in here that I just showed. So you're probably detecting a little bit of a bias in me right now, I imagine. There is a PowerPoint too that I got a PDF handouts that I sent on to Rianne a little bit late this morning. My apologies for that, but she'll be able to send those out too with all the links to them as well. So that way, if you want to go through them and visit them, go through and look at them, visit them a little bit later, you'll be able to. Some other things that I really like, 0 to 3. They've got some positive parenting resources here as well. And of course, I like this. Parenting comes with mistakes and missteps. What makes a parent great is recognizing when things haven't gone right and responding with love to repair the relationship. And that's so true. You know, and that's what I talk about too I talk about that with some of my older clients, but with my parents, I talk with them about it's not so much how we deal with the incident, it's really how we come out of it. How do we recover from this difficult situation? And that really is what is the foundation for that relationship if you've got a child with complex interfering behavior. If we're coming out trying to control, if we're coming out where, we've had to, in some cases, I remember working with it was my first CBC case. This mom, single mother, two boys, one kid with some real complex interfering behavior, she would restrain him because it was the only way to get him to calm down. And that worked when he was 3, 4, and 5, and 6. But when he was 12 and 13, which is when I was working with her, that didn't work. But what was interesting is that the journey of trying to unravel some of the complexities of his behavior, what I learned in working with the family and working with him was what he really wanted was that intense attention. So that attention that he got from his mom when he was restrained and that feeling of pressure and that feeling of security after he kind of started to calm down. But also too, in talking with the mom more, she would be crying, she would be upset, he would be upset, and then they'd hug and have all this other affection that was given out after that. That was the behavior chain for him that he learned. So the way I access my mom's really intense emotional attention is I become aggressive and destructive. And so when I came into the house, they had broken windows, all the doors were kicked in and mostly not destroyed, they still closed, but they were missing a lot of parts. And that was the thing, but it took me a good 9 months to figure that out. And once we did that, everything changed, for their relationship because he didn't want just a little bit of attention, like a hi there, like a lot of little pieces of attention. He wanted some big emotional outpouring. And so we worked with mom to do that on a regular basis. So that way he would get it without that misbehavior that's how he acquired it when he was really young. Anyway, I kind of digressed there a little bit. So yeah, the positive parenting one is good. The CDC one, I like the one that they have too, because they have it based on age. So if you go to the positive parenting tips at the CDC site, then you can go and look at what are some different things to do at different milestones, and they give you a laundry list of different things that you can do. So I find this one really useful because again, it helps it helps parents know what to expect at different ages for kids here as well. Um, there's a lot of things here at the ECTA site as well. This is the Technical Assistance Center that really propped up, I think, um, after the challenging behavior one, kind of they ECTA was awarded the national grant, whereas I think who was it? Was it TEFL? I can't remember the one of the early childhood groups that worked on the pyramid model was not. And so there's a lot of good information here, but it doesn't provide it in it provides it more in like this is how I think about it rather than this is how I can use it. And that's where I like the pyramid model because it's really based on this is how I use it. I use it to build relationships. I use it to set up the environment. I use it to provide really, targeted things that I need to teach my kiddo and really work with them more on. It's got a great list of resources though, but like I said, there's just a lot of stuff here, and it's not in areas that are as accessible, I think. So like family member roles and informed clinical reasoning, that's a mouthful just to say, let alone I try to imagine I try to imagine like a parent reading that. I would be fine with it because of my background, but most of my families would not be, so partnering with your child's assessment team members. They may not even know who their assessment team members are because, they have this big team. If they have a kid with special needs, they have a big team already. Which ones are doing assessment and which ones are not? It becomes very convoluted to find information here. But again, there is some really good stuff here. Probably more for your advanced families as well. Head Start too, they've also got some materials here as well. These are kind of similar to what's on the challenging behavior site. This one is really nice though too. This is the headstart.gov site, and they have an understanding of managing children's behaviors. And they actually talk about the pyramid model up here as well too, because it's something that's utilized in Head Starts as well. It's nice because down below here too, they talk about challenging behavior a little bit, and they talk about mental health consultation, but probably not as much as we probably really could use, I think. And I think that's one of the things that we're trying to overcome in this country in general is how to think about mental health for young children and not just only for older children. I realize too, there's some other things here too that books that I'll kind of point out. This one is one resolving your children's challenging behavior. It used to be called Parenting with Positive Behavior Supports here. It's a great book, lots of great resource. It is kind of dense. This one, next one I like a lot too is The Power of Positive Parenting. It's very routine based, um, written from a more behavioral perspective, but it really kind of breaks things down into tasks and helps with teaching tasks. There's also Love and Logic for Early Childhood. I don't know how many of you have heard of the other Love and Logic books here? Many of you? I see some heads shaking, hands up. Yeah, they're very great in terms of engaging, and this one sounds equally as good. I just have not read it or used it at this point at all. But yeah, so those are some of the resources there too. Like I said, there'll be more in the PDF here as well. Oh yeah, Shannon, thanks for sharing that too. The Pyramid Model Consortium site. Yeah. And Rianne's going to put that up on Padlet. Good deal. All right. We'll dive back in here and jump ahead a little bit too, and because I want to have some Q&A here at the end for you all. All right, so we've looked at some of our resources here. These are all the links that you'll see in the PDF that Rianne will be able to send out. One of the things when behavior becomes complex, we're going back to the same thing as before, right? Too often, risk to others, quality of life issue. But when it becomes complex, it's really around where it doesn't respond to typical, easily managed interventions. So that's one of the things, when I think about complex is, we've been doing this for a while. I'm looking at my child's developmental, where they are developmentally, it's still not working. And we've given it, either enough time, what should have been enough time, which kind of depends on the child. But if they're not responding to some of those typical kinds of interventions, then that's probably when the behavior is going to become complex. So here in Alaska, we've got several things that are going on right now. Some of you may have heard of the Complex Care Initiative, but you may not have. And if you haven't, it's totally okay because they're not really engaging with stakeholders at this point. They just sent out if you look down at the four components down below, the stakeholder engagement, they just recently put out a request for information, which was released October 27th. It's due next week. So I'd encourage all of you to read it and respond to it because one of the things that our state doesn't really do is they don't really look at early childhood enough in terms of complex care. They'll look at complex medical, but they don't look at the overlap between complex medical, complex, with cognitive issues or trauma and mental health. And so I'm going to respond to this over the weekend. I've just been too busy at this point, but I'm going to respond to it because there should be a continuum there. There should be a continuum from birth to 22 at the very least, where we're looking at those developmental issues. We're looking at a combination of co-occurring things, which can be much more challenging when kids are trying to learn than as they progress into adulthood. Um, so yeah, so the websites there also, if you want to read more about what they have there, there really isn't much because again, it's more administrative. This next one is Complex Care Providers United to Create Options. I'm involved with this one. The Alaska Mental Health Trust Authority is funding this, and they're really kind of focusing on those individuals who experience co-occurring issues. So it might be an intellectual disability and a mental health issue, or intellectual disability and medical issue. So this is actually focusing more on older. It would be more like older youth and adults in this situation. So Phil Taft from MethodWorks and myself, we've been doing this since 2012, this kind of work, and so we're looking at supporting this development basically of a new complex care model. And so part of our work this year is going to be to work with agencies, providers, and families and find out what's important for them, what would help them with the complex care needs they've had in the past. And then at that point, develop an advisory council to really help govern the complex care model here in the state. Children's Mental Health Initiative. This is one I mentioned earlier with Heidi Haas and her organization, ACCA. They're involved with this. Kudos to them. They're standing up a mental health services in their agency, which is so impressive because it's a lot of work. But this comes from a grant from SAMHSA, and they're at the federal level. It's from the state of Alaska. The state of Alaska applied for it, received it. They're really looking at systems of care at state level and local level, as well as service implementation. And that's where Heidi's organization comes in. That's what they're doing. They're working on that service piece, as well as looking at their local system of care, too. There are some other CMHI grantees in Alaska. There's Fairbanks Native Association. They were awarded one in 2023, along with the state of Alaska. YKHC and Manilik were both awarded CMHI grants in 2024 as well. So there are some other partnership opportunities related to CMHI too, if you would like. Talking about the system of care, though, so we look at children, families being at the middle of that, and then all these different kind of services could potentially wrap around them. The problem is they're all siloed, and so sometimes that system can feel fragmented to families. So some of the work around CMHI is to help remove some of that fragmentation and siloing, so that way things are kind of smooth. You could say smooth or smoother, I guess. It makes me think when we did the Alaska Pyramid Partnership, we talked about no wrong door, and that's kind of what we're talking about here with this system of care. Like there should be no wrong door where if they come into an early childhood agency, for supports on the daily, they should be able to access, at least some information that will help get them behavioral health services, for example, or mental health services, or help bridge them to those educational services their child will need later on. So it's still that same idea of no wrong door, but it's going to look a little bit different. But you can see that early childhood services, right? That's a core part of this. That's one part of our system of care, whether it's providers out there or specialists that are OT and speech and people that are helping support the family and the child care providers, or like Thread. I sit on the Thread board, and our work is to try and help improve overall the quality of early childhood here in the state. There's a lot of different facets to early childhood services, right? So that should definitely be a part of what CMHI is. So this next slide is basically what you saw before, but what we've added here, Stephanie O'Brien is our new program officer, and she's come in to actually add a track around infant early childhood mental health. And the goal of that is to create this continuum from birth to 22 around supports that children and their families can receive related to mental health. So it's not just once I start school and I'm 5 or 6, now I enter into mental health services, but I should be able to have that available to me even as I'm younger as well. And families, if families very well may need that support as well too. Um, So that said, a little bit more about the CMHI is we've got like grantees that are all throughout the state there. And we're also added this year a complex care team to the Children's Mental Health Initiative. So it's a clinical supports that come from our center here. We do intensive support by reviewing files. We're looking at interdisciplinary teaming, and we're utilizing a biopsychosocial model. So we're looking at not only what might be occurring, developmentally or cognitively with the individual, but also mental health wise. Have they experienced trauma? Or is there some other kind of mental health issue that might be impacting that child somehow, or medical? Um, that's one of the things that's always surprising to me how much that medical is over the last 15 years of doing this. I'm surprised how that medical overlays with all these other issues that come into play for some of our kiddos that have complex behaviors. Last thing I want to talk about is the CBC. That's some of the work I've been doing too since 2012. It's been around since 2012. They do take referrals for kids that are as young as 4 years old. They receive support. They have to receive support from some professional. So it could be infant learning. It could be, well, I guess not infant learning because they're 4 at this point. Um, but it could be through speech behavior analyst. It could be maybe another agency that they're working with. Um, and if that interfering behavior puts that child at risk of a more restrictive placement, then they can qualify. And here's the link too for being able to access that page that has the referral form on there as well for you. One of the things that I love about the CBC and I've loved about it is that the family can receive the same support as the agency. The agency is basically the client of the CBC consultant, but we work with families a lot. So they can get training, they can get access to the behavior assessment, to the behavior plan, they can get training on the behavior plan, training on implementation of it. They can get ongoing support as well as the agency. And this is something that's kind of unusual because oftentimes our families are kind of outside of some of this intermittent supports they can get. I end up going into some of the families I've worked with 2 or 3 times a week in the beginning just to get things stabilized for them. Um, and then here I've got a list of all the different contacts for the different people that are on the different projects that I mentioned. If you are interested more about the Children's Mental Health Initiative, feel free to reach out to Stephanie and Courtney. They'll be more than happy to follow up with you and talk more. And then Eric Talbert is the program officer for the Complex Behavior Collaborative. All right, I felt like I was speeding through that last part there. Are there any questions or any conversations or comments, things that people want to definitely like discuss or ask or just put out there and make part of the real world, make it live for everyone? I'll put my contact information in there too for everyone. It looks like I did it twice though. I don't know how I did that.
It
It's Matt.
happens when you copy and paste. It's annoying. It's not you, it's Zoom. It's fine.
Everything that you learn about today though, I feel like that's complex interfering behavior here in the state. At least things that are happening more systematically, right? And I guess that might be something too to share, if people are able to, is some of the things that might be happening more locally with either groups that you're working with, families you're working with, because I feel like that's where with the work that we're doing around with the trust and around that complex care model, the idea is we're trying to find more information here too about what what's working and what is needed, on the ground level as well.
I can just mention, Chris, I know Heidi. Are you still on here, Heidi? Heidi and I are part of the FPP advisory group, which is a cohort for 0 to 3. I think it's Finance Policy Project, Heidi, if I'm saying acronyms right. But anyway, we're working on some public marketing right now out there. We're working with a contractor, but to get some marketing out there for families, providers, caregivers, just a little bit more on not to be so afraid of infant early childhood mental health. That, there's natural things. I think you and I talked. It could be as easy as singing songs, eye contact with your baby at a younger age and on it. Because we found that we think, well, what we're seeing is providers are a little bit more, they don't get trained a lot in this in certain models. And it's I think they veer a little bit more on the protective side of not wanting to go into the topic area to talk about social emotional things. I don't know if Heidi, if you want to talk any more about that, but that is something we're working on right now. So.
That was perfect, Shannon.
Okay, thanks. I thought I missed something.
No, and that's exciting to hear because I mean, infant early childhood's been around in the state for quite a while. I mean, Gail Trujillo has been doing a lot of work, it seems like, for over 15 years now. Um, and it's nice to have Stephanie O'Brien in the program officer role at the state because she recognizes that role of early childhood in the whole continuum of childhood. And so it's been nice to have those conversations because it was apparent before she came on, that it wasn't really a consideration. And to be honest, there were so many things I was focused on with the project being new, I didn't even think of it as well. So it's been great to have someone carrying that banner because there is that stigma of trying to, but also I think too, just misunderstanding. Sometimes I think they think of mental health as being like it's more like serious mental illness, but it starts and it has its roots in small things, very small things.
And Chris, you may know more than me, but I've worked with Stephanie on a few things and I've referred her to a couple of places. But what Stephanie can do is her group, they can't do direct service, but they have funding and grants out there that would provide some help in this area. So that is somebody that I think is key in some of the funding on some initiatives, depending on what she has available to use as a resource. And that, again, is Stephanie O'Brien.
Yeah, yeah. I know there's some funding from her office that's going to ICY, the Infant Child Youth Conference. In I think it's March or April. I can't remember. Maybe it's May. But yeah, some of that's there to help with that track around infant and children, early childhood. But yeah, that's a really good point. She is a great resource that way. And that's been the thing too. So I mentioned the system of care state level. The thing that she's been doing a lot of here lately is having conversations up the management chain to really help bring together some of the different division of behavioral health projects that are working on mental health for kids, whether it's at different ages or different levels or different reasons, to try to help have less duplication, but also more coordination ultimately, which, I didn't realize. She said there's several projects going on, and she's talking with many different people. Like, I think she's mentioned at least six different things going on where they're not collaborating. And that's what we're trying to work towards now, is bringing people together more. Well, I should say she is. I'm just kind of there doing other stuff.
That's awesome. Well, this has been amazing, Chris. I was just watching the chat as people were just showing you lots of appreciation and the information sharing. I know that like as this settles in and people go back talk to their coalitions, their agencies, the providers in their area, more questions might come up. And so I'm so glad that you shared your email. I will share that as well on Padlet too, and people can continue reaching out to you for questions. Is there the opportunity for you? Like, are you available for other types of trainings or like travel? Is that something like if people were to reach out to you for like direct support in their community, is that something you or your agencies that you work with could provide support around?
Potentially, yeah. I mean, that's
Yeah,
where, like, through the CBC, we definitely could, and we've
cool.
done that before, yeah. And then in other situations too, we've tried to combine like the work that we do with CBC because we do travel a lot and it's paid for, is to try to combine that with other visits to well, like there was a Head Start that we worked with where it worked out combining that with another case that we had in Southeast. So, that was
Perfect.
great because it helped cut down the cost at that point because it did cost them a little bit just to do the behavior assessment and the plan
Yeah,
and all of it. But yeah, yeah, we'll try to
nice.
find ways to make it worthwhile and easy. Yeah.
For sure. Yeah. Because sometimes until like you get all this information, right, you don't know what you don't know until somebody teaches you. And so with all these amazing resources and knowing that these things are happening across the state, the opportunities could be opening up for just communities to be able to get some additional support, especially with those complex interfering behaviors. And there's really creative things happening around the state, right? Like as Alaskans, we are very creative, and whenever we don't necessarily have the resource in there, we figure out a way. And Bailey, you have a bird on your shoulder, completely distracted.
I'm sorry.
Oh my gosh, Snow White. That's beautiful. Squirrel moment, but it was a bird. Oh, I am impressed. I am so impressed.
We had to ask about that at the last I was in breakout session with Bailey on the last time meeting, and it's like, okay, can we talk about the bird?
There was a bird and two dogs. There's always a bunch. She really
Right.
she loves computer meetings and watching the screen light up when different people are talking.
Oh my gosh, that's amazing. I love that so much. Oh, what a joy that brings to any meeting. Um, well, just looking at time, we are right a little bit after 2. Chris, truly, thank you so much for being a friend to all our childhood providers, to Shannon and I, to the networks that we support, to the ECN. I think that just your level of support and presence is very meaningful. As I mentioned before, just your calm demeanor and love that you share just in your presence is just incredible. So please continue to reach out to Chris. We'll share his stuff on the Padlet, and any way that you can, are able to share the information in your communities, then we can connect you some more. Before we wrap up, don't forget, if you're interested to apply for the last stipend through the PDG funding, to please get that in by Wednesday. I got some, so that's very exciting. And then our next meeting will be December. Shannon, anything else?
No, this was great. A lot of information.
Chris, this is not the last time we're seeing you, friend.
I
I'm
don't
sure we
think
will see
He
you
knows
soon.
we have his number.
that's right.
All right, everyone, take good care, stay warm, and we'll talk to y'all soon.
Thank
Bye,
you.
everyone.
Take care. Bye.
Have a
Thank
good week.
you.
Okay, I'm gonna go. Bye, Amy.
Bye. Have
Take
fun.
care, my friend. All right, we'll see you later. Bye.